One of the questions I get asked semi-frequently is about masks and bust collecting. What's my advice? What's my tips on getting into it? It's a loaded question that sometimes I feel is a little daunting trying to answer, but I figured why not finally do a video and talk about my experience and kind of show you a few pieces of my collection and the story of those pieces. Getting into it is an interesting thing because first you have to see what inspired you, what decided to make you want to get into it. Was it companies like Trick or Treat Studios that showed you cool pieces that you were like, oh man, this is really cool looking and it's affordable? Or was it a horror room tour that you watched on YouTube and made you say, oh my God, that's incredible, I want that? For me, the two kind of came together. While I really started getting into mask, aka bust collecting, more frequently, and what I understand the term bust to mean is something that is for display use only, like this Roy Burns that is a Jeremy Bohr model, which is no longer made anymore, but it's for display. There's no holes or anything in the eye, or it's not a hood, aka is what they call a hood is when the face is missing and you can wear a Jason head with the hockey mask over it, but you can see. Kind of like what Roy wore in the end of Friday the 13th, Part 5. But for me, it all coincided together because I would go on YouTube. In pre-Trick or Treat Studios, you would find videos of people with these Jason collections with these busts that look absolutely remarkable, lifelike. And I was like, what is this whole world? That coincided with Trick or Treat Studios really coming out and starting to do a lot of pieces. And it really got me interested and wanting to be a part of this because I think they're beautiful pieces that can go in your movie rooms that can just, I mean, they're amazing. They display on the shelves and they look so cool. And I learned, I'll answer this part right now, what should you get first and thing? I always say there's nothing more fun to get than a Friday the 13th mask or a bust or a hockey mask. There's nothing more fun to collect. Even though Elm Street's my favorite, collecting Friday the 13th is the most precious joy I have in my life that I could never, deny. You have to figure out what kind of collector you want to be with masks because there's certain levels to it for sure, but then you have to figure out what your game plan is. I made a lot of mistakes. One of my biggest mistakes was just trying to fill up my room with these things. So what I would do is I would go to Trick or Treat Studios and just start getting masks left and right. And this is not going to be a knock on Trick or Treat Studios, but there's no denying that some of their stuff just looks better than others. I think some of the things that they've done that look really good is like my Halloween 5 mask. It was good enough to where I never felt I really needed to go out and get a better version of that mask to display. I have the one from Trick or Treat Studios, and it looks really close to the movie, and quite frankly, it just looks a lot more well-made than some of the other products that they have. Other masks they did, like the Curse of Michael Myers mask, is good, but I found myself just really wanting something better. So then I had to spend more money, and I got one from Creation X, which is one of the best studios you can go to. Their quality is impeccable. Then when it came to the Jason masks, it first started off on me just wanting to get masks. But then I realized what I really like is Jason. It's not just the hockey mask. So then I wanted to start getting into that world. But then I realized some of this stuff is not cheap. You can't just, on a whim, decide to buy these things. At least for the average person, you can't. You have to kind of space this stuff out and try to plan it. And that was when I realized I can't just keep buying masks just to fill a room. Because as horror collectors and as movie room fans or somebody that tries to have a movie room, naturally you want to start filling it out and putting all kinds of cool stuff in there. But eventually you get to a point to where room is the number one thing about it. You have to make sure you have room. So what happened to me is I found myself closeting a lot of stuff that I had. I would go to Trick or Treat Studios and grab this mask, oh, this Sam Trick or Treat mask, that's cool. But then all of a sudden I learned about a company called the Devil's Latex. The Devil's Latex is one of the best. Shout out to my boy Steve Bellamy. He is the best in the business. Now, his stuff is remarkable. Now, this is where I learned about the higher end, more bougie, more, pristine level stuff that you could get. And especially if you're a Friday the 13th fan, a lot of my masks are from Devil's Latex. For instance, my Part 4 Roy Burns came from him. And then I also got my coveted Jason Takes Manhattan mask. It's one of my favorite masks I have from him, and it is a work of beauty. How much do these things cost? Sometimes it seems like it's some sort of a secret. I'll be honest with you and tell you guys. So after I realized the biggest mistake with mask and bust collecting is the need to just want to get a lot and fill out your horror room sometimes, I realized that eventually you're going to want something a little bit better quality. If I had started this all over again, I would have instead, from buying a bunch of stuff from Trick or Treat, would have waited saw things that really, really inspired me and things I really loved, and just spaced them out and got them accordingly. Because I'll never forget the first time I got a really nice bust. What bust was that? That was my Killer Clowns from Outer Space bust. This thing is incredible. So incredible that no matter how many times I walk into this horror room, I realize this is one of the nicest things I've ever seen. Now, a lot of the busts I have in my horror room cost anywhere from between $200 to $400. I know that's not cheap, but when you space things out, instead of getting one Trick or Treat Studios mask a month, and you get maybe 2 or 3 Jasons a year, and you space things out and you save accordingly, I think it's just more worth it in the long run. Think about it like this. You're the one that has to come in here every day and enjoy movies and feel inspired, especially if you're a YouTuber and you want to come up with video ideas. Sometimes I come in here and I'll sit down and I'll look at these works of beauty and get inspired by ideas I want to do, or talk about the remake of Friday the 13th again. I ended up reviewing that movie last year and it ended up being a really cool video. I would go to the Devil's Latex and save up and get some of their busts, like my Jason Takes Manhattan one. And every time I walk into the room, I am floored by how nice they look. It really, really elevates your horror room. And not that there's anything wrong with these smaller companies like Trick or Treat Studios. My always biggest thing is watch reviews. Watch multiple reviews of some of these masks, because somebody's camera, the lighting of the video can highly alter your perception of the quality of this mask. And if you're a convention goer, I always say go to the conventions and see these things in person as much as you can before buying, especially during Halloween time. If you're interested in, say, the Halloween's Ends mask that came up from Trick or Treat Studios, wait. Go to Party City, go to Spirit Halloween, and see it for yourself before buying it. Now, you have to figure out what kind of collector you want to be and what kind of stuff you want to collect. I've always said that originality is key in being yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't be inspired from other people. There have been YouTubers that have the most incredible horror bust mask collections that I've ever seen that have truly inspired me to want to get things or set things up in a certain way, and I think that's just natural. A lot of musicians come up with great songs based off of other songs, and I think as collectors, we look at our friends, we look at people who have horror rooms that inspire us, that want us to get different kinds of setups or change things around, and I think that's awesome. Because at the end of the day, your nuance is going to make you different no matter what. And the last thing I want to say is, really when it comes to bust or mask collecting, really get the stuff that makes you feel good. Don't just get something because it may look really good if you're not really a big fan of the movie, or vice versa. Find the stuff that really makes you just feel good inside. I love collecting Friday the 13th, and I don't think anything will ever change that about me. Elm Street's my favorite, but when you look in here and you see these beautiful Jason busts from Scareware Productions or Fear the Dark Studios, there's nothing like it. And it just makes you feel good coming in here and seeing these works of art. When you spend money on something too, you're naturally going to want to take care of it more. You're going to want to dust things off and keep it clean. Display them in a nice, spaced out way. I'm really proud of how my Jason busts turned out. The real moral of this video is to say this. When it comes to getting into mask and bust collecting, figure out the stuff that you're really into, let yourself be inspired from other collectors, and realize that this stuff is going to be with you in this house every day that you're going to have to look at and see. Get stuff that really inspires you, and remember, the one time you get something of really high quality, you're going to become more addicted to that than anything. So before you decide to fill up your room, really figure out what it is that makes you tick. That's my advice, guys. Happy collecting, and if you're getting ready to get into mask bust collecting, I wish you luck. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. A huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.